Welcome to the APEX presentation, Experiences of Confidence and Challenge in Developmental Math, a qualitative inquiry of students in the community college setting. My name is Scott Self, and this presentation is part of a larger research team's inquiry into the developmental math in the community colleges of West Texas. This research is a part of a community-based participatory research program where stakeholders among a consortium of community colleges asked our team to investigate the student experiences of developmental math in their institutions. Recent investigations into developmental math have primarily focused upon outcomes and trajectories. In some instances, very small qualitative studies have given voice to student experiences. This study employs a case study methodology to give voice to a larger sample of students who are in or who have recently completed developmental math sequences in the community college setting. The research questions for this inquiry investigated how students described their confidence and challenges with developmental math education courses and how students demonstrate the loci of motivation, whether intrinsic or extrinsic, in describing confidence and challenges with developmental math courses. Findings indicate that this sample of students viewed confidence and challenges through positive lenses, except when describing transitions from secondary to post-secondary settings. Many researchers have concluded that when students test into the lowest developmental coursework offered by colleges, it is unlikely that those students would complete the rest of the developmental sequence. According to Edgecombe in 2011, long developmental sequences often influence students to leave college completely. If the short-term purpose of developmental coursework is to prepare students to be successful in their first college-level work related to their major, more research should be done to find the disconnect between developmental coursework in community colleges and persistence, especially related to STEM fields. Benken et al. Investigated developmental math students' skills and attitudes to determine why some students succeed while others do not. Significant differences were found between the mean rating of self-perceived skill level as a factor of whether students took a fourth year of math in high school. The type of course that students took in the fourth year was also an important factor. 85.2% of all students who took statistics, calculus, or AP courses in high school math did so in the fourth year. Students, particularly those who took statistics, calculus, or AP courses, quote, specified that they felt inaccurately placed considering they fell short of placing out of remediation by only a few points, end quote. Benken's findings suggest that students may not be aware or prepared to take placement exams, particularly when those are taken at the very beginning of the semester. Duranzik found that students are experiencing developmental math through different lenses. Some believed that developmental math was evidence of culture gaps, while others believed that developmental math was evidence of poorer K-12 experiences. Some saw developmental math as a means to achieving academic goals, while others believed that developmental math was insufficient to support academic goals. Duranzik's findings represent an important conceptual frame for the study of developmental math education. Students are experiencing developmental math through different lenses. Outcomes of developmental math programs may well be a factor of disparate experiences. Eccles' expectancy value theory suggested that students' career choice was rooted in his or her strong belief in academic ability. Wang et al. Noted that a student's belief, when balanced with specific goals and the value attached to specific tasks, impacted career choice. They noted that men and women both were more likely to choose STEM fields if they felt they were strong in math ability. Wang et al. Also concluded that, quote, believing that you are good at a task may further enhance your performance in the task, but it does not mean that you enjoy the task and will continue to pursue it, end quote. Their findings further indicated that, quote, when women see STEM fields as useful, widely applicable, and viable career options, they will more likely opt into them, end quote. This suggests that there might be implications surrounding the STEM field choice for women that went beyond confidence in math ability. Ng in 2014 also focused on the impact a parent has on both extrinsic and intrinsic motivations in supporting and encouraging math achievement. Extrinsic motivation can be referred to as, quote, doing something leading to a specific outcome, end quote. Intrinsic motivation was defined by Ng as, quote, doing something because it is interesting or enjoyable, end quote. This motivational influence may lead to STEM exploration. Ng noted that the authoritarian position of parents may further encourage students to pursue fields in STEM regardless of math confidence or ability. Levine et al. Defined pluralistic ignorance as, quote, student athletes conforming to the perceived but false social norm in their public behaviors, thus undermining their academic performance and simultaneously reinforcing the false social norm for the rest of their team, end quote. Student athletes showed evidence that they believed that peers, educators, and community members expected them to perform at a low academic rate and be less interested than students who are not affiliated with sports. The belief that low academic performance and lack of motivation for education were the stereotypes that accentuated student athlete identity. The student athletes also judged themselves in this manner. Levine et al. In 2014 asserted that student athletes illustrated mannerisms aligned with the pluralistic ignorance from peers' misperceived judgment of lack of academic interest and capabilities to succeed. Their results indicated that student athletes matched their academic efforts to the perceptions of their peers rather than their own beliefs. In summary, Levine et al. Stated, quote, the athlete's perceptions follows an established phenomenon of pluralistic ignorance in which misperceived group beliefs become self-fulfilling prophecies of group behavior, end quote. The Community Partners, a consortium of community colleges in West Texas, wanted to hear the voice of students in the developmental math sequences. A previous study investigated the perceptions of developmental math instructors, and the community partners believed that the student voice was equally important in evaluating the sequences of developmental math in the community college setting. Most of the literature investigating developmental math in college students focuses primarily upon quantitative analyses of outcomes data. Students' voices are rarely amplified. When students' voices are amplified in qualitative inquiry, the literature tends to consider very small samples of 1 to 3 subjects. This qualitative inquiry represents a much larger data set, interviews of 12 students who are in or have recently completed a developmental math sequence at community colleges in the state of Texas. In particular, this investigation queries the following research questions. Number 1, how do students describe their confidence and challenges with developmental math education courses? And number 2, how do students demonstrate the sources of motivation, whether intrinsic or extrinsic, in describing confidence and challenges with developmental math courses? The present study employed the theoretical framework of systems theory. A system is, quote, a configuration of parts connected and joined together by a web of relationships, end quote. This quote by the Primer Group defines a system as a family of relationships among the members acting as a whole. Von Bertalanffy defines systems as, quote, elements in standing relationship, end quote. The educational system has relationships with state actors, including students, parents, instructors, staff members like advisors, and peers. Each relationship affects the system and creates complex problems within the system. For example, first-generation college students enter the educational system without an example of a parent who has been through the system before. They have no experiential knowledge of college, which can affect where they place in developmental coursework upon college entry. Developmental coursework takes place as a part of a systematic college preparedness issue where both the K-12 system and collegiate systems could be inhibiting student success. Developmental coursework, especially sequential developmental coursework, leads to college level coursework, to major level coursework, and eventually to degree conferment. The literature suggests that many students enrolled in developmental coursework do not persist in STEM majors and therefore do not earn STEM degrees. Further, students enrolled in developmental coursework are more likely to drop out of college altogether. Change in higher education takes time. When systems within higher education are in place, they are largely resistant to change, even if actors, students or instructors, are unsatisfied with the status quo of a higher education issue like developmental math. For that reason, higher education is largely homeostatic. As shown by the literature review, the themes of this study on developmental math education and STEM fields include self-efficacy, student development, academic preparedness, and so forth that contribute to the larger problem of persistence. It's a systematic problem, as everything is connected. There were 12 participants in the present study, 4 of whom were female and 8 of whom were male. Most of the participants were first-generation college students. Only one student had a parent who had graduated from college. 9 of the participants were traditional college students matriculating to post-secondary education soon after high school. 3 were non-traditional college students. 2 of the participants were student athletes. The other 10 were not participants in community college athletics. The participant pool was equally distributed among Black, white, and Hispanic students. The research team developed an interview protocol through a process of consensus model, and all team members practiced the interview protocol to evaluate the flow of questions, improve the wording of questions, and become familiar with the protocol. Community college gatekeepers recruited students for the study, and the research team followed up with the students who completed the demographic survey to conduct interviews. The research team conducted debriefing sessions after the first round of interviews and weekly through the rest of data collection. 2 of the 6 community colleges were successful in recruiting participants for the study. 6 interviews were collected from Whitetail Deer Community College and 6 from Mule Deer Community College. The college names are pseudonyms. The interview protocol of 30 questions was dispersed among the research team members. The first 3 questions of the interview protocol were analyzed by the team collectively, and the rest were grouped by thematic inquiry and distributed to the team members for analysis. This presentation focuses upon interview protocol questions number 4 through 9, which queried students' experiences of confidence and challenge in the developmental math sequence. Trustworthiness was established for this case study through a purposeful sampling of participants bounded by students who were in developmental math sequences in the 2016-17 school year. Additionally, an audit trail was established by preserving recordings for transcription, and interview transcription documents were standardized for reference. Finally, a constant comparative method was employed to member check the identification of emerging themes in the data set. Emerging themes were then axially coded by positive or negative descriptions and markers for intrinsic or extrinsic loci of control. As mentioned previously, the research questions for this inquiry were these. How do students describe their confidence and challenges with developmental math courses? And how do students demonstrate the sources of motivation, whether intrinsic or extrinsic, in describing confidence and challenges with developmental math courses? Students responding to questions about confidence and challenge in developmental math described their experiences in terms of complexities of math operations. There were 22 utterances referencing complexity. For example, some students expressed challenges with orders of operations, others with factoring, and still others with remembering the processes for solutions. Donna, and all of these names are pseudonyms, referenced complexity and confidence by stating, quote, I remembered a lot of the order and structure you need in math to solve the equations and do the problems, and that I know that now there's going to be an equation for whatever math you need to do, end quote. This response was scored as positive, since she referenced the feeling of confidence in terms of success, and intrinsic loci of motivation as she described her intention to apply learned processes to future problems. Of the 22 responses that featured complexity of math operations, 14 were coded intrinsic and 15 were coded positive. The majority of utterances on the complexity of math were positive, and the students described a sense of personal control of the learning environment. Students also responded to questions about confidence and challenge in developmental math in terms of their instructors or tutors. There were 10 utterances referencing instructors. For example, students described interactions with faculty members, tutors, or friends who helped with homework. Caspian stated that he had, in the past, failed to seek help. He failed his developmental math course in the fall semester, but found confidence in the spring semester by discovering that the instructors were willing to offer support. Caspian said, "But then that time you'd be like, nah, there's so much help out there." End quote. This response was coded as positive and intrinsic. Of the 10 responses that featured instructors, 8 were coded intrinsic and 8 were coded positive. The majority of utterances describing confidence and challenge in terms of instructors was positive, and the students described a sense of personal control of the learning environment. Students also responded to questions about confidence and challenge in developmental math in terms of study habits. There were 9 utterances referencing study habits. For example, students described the challenges of attending class, completing homework assignments, and completing exams. Hookham described his experience of confidence in terms of study habits and expressed a sense of pride in his ability to demonstrate these habits. Quote, "I would think that a successful math student would go to class, attend class, do not miss class. That's one thing I pride myself in." End quote. Of the 9 responses that featured study habits, 8 were coded as intrinsic and 8 were coded as positive. The majority of utterances describing confidence and challenge in terms of study habits were positive, and the students described a sense of personal control in their learning environment. 2 additional themes were identified in the students' descriptions of confidence and challenge. While the themes of transition and assessment represented few utterances and compared to the other themes, they are notable in unique ways. Students described confidence and challenge in reference to transition from high school to community college. In fact, all of the utterances referencing transition were negative. None of the utterances described transition in a positive manner. Assessment was also a minimally represented theme. Caspian, for example, described his experience with formative assessments and homework assignments in positive and intrinsic terms. Quote, "And then you're checking your answers of the, answer sheet, you're getting them right and this and that, and you're just like, man, so yeah." End quote. While the themes of transition and assessment were notable, the number of utterances related to those themes were too small to derive strong impressions of the students' perceptions. It appears appropriate that future research would consider students' experiences with transition and confidence with more direct inquiry. Students described experiences in developmental math in overwhelmingly positive terms. Of the 56 utterances within the 5 identified themes, 40 were positive. Only the theme of transitions was demonstrably negative. Moreover, students expressed feelings of competence and challenge primarily in terms of the complexities of math operations. It appears that this sample of students have a positive view of their abilities to do math and have developed a sense of accomplishment and a belief that the developmental sequence has provided them the ability to successfully take ownership of their own learning. Community college partners should be aware that this sample of students expressed beliefs that developmental math has helped to demystify mathematics for the participants investigated. While these experiences may only be transferable to students in the 2 community colleges sampled, the students in this sample learned to believe that they can learn math. Moreover, this sample of students expressed beliefs that instructors are helpful. While some of the students described confidence and challenge in negative terms when describing experiences of transitions, more direct inquiry is indicated to determine the transferability of these findings. Several additional limitations should be taken into consideration. There was a very narrow window for data collection, as the APEX requirements had a specific deadline. This posed a particular challenge in coordinating a research team's efforts to address community partner questions in the community college setting. Additionally, the research team did not recruit participants directly. Relying upon gatekeepers provided less control over the purposeful sampling. The imbalance in gender is also a concern. A longer window of data collection may have provided a more balanced gender representation in the sample. It is also important to note my own bias in coding emerging themes and axial analyses. I am a white male doctoral candidate for whom learning has usually come very easily. My experiences with challenges in coursework have largely been in reference to drive and motivation and rarely with the material. I also tend to default to a post-positivist epistemology, even as I attempt to engage in constructivist inquiry. These may have been factors in the way that I approached the data. Several new research questions emerged in this inquiry that bear further investigation. First, is there a relationship between gender and positivity or negativity of confidence in math? Second, do students change in their perceptions of confidence and challenges through the first course of the developmental math sequence? And finally, what factors contribute to the negative perceptions of transition from the secondary to developmental post-secondary education? Following is a very short clip showing the research team conducting interviews at one of the partner community colleges.
The wise man's tools are analogies and puzzles. The woman holds her tongue, knowing silence will speak for her. Brave men tell the truth. The wise man's tools are analogies and puzzles. The woman holds her tongue, knowing silence will speak for her. Will speak for her. And everywhere I go, there's always something to remind me of another place and time where love that traveled far had found me.
I would like to specifically thank Dr. Madison for her guidance to the research team and to my research team partners, David Villarreal, Connie Watson, Maggie Gilchrist, Casey Morris, and Tricia Ryan. It has been a rewarding journey to work with Dr. M and the rest of the team.